Dan, how are you?
Hey, what's up, Jim? I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I am peachy keen, buddy. Sorry for being a little bit late there. I had another call here that ran over. So,
Yeah, no problem at all. Just wanted to make sure we were still good.
yeah, I was just looking for, I realized I didn't have your cell phone information. I was going to send you a text to let you know I was a couple of minutes late, but
Yeah, no problem at all. How's the week going?
so far, busier than a three-legged cat in a litter box.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's a good thing.
Yes, it is. Keeps you young, keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, very cool. Well, yeah. So I guess just kind of 10,000 foot view, me in a nutshell. Um, so um, I've been investing in real estate for about 5 years now. Been a professional for better part of 10 years, kind of primarily within sales, and was fortunate enough to kind of become a pretty high income earner pretty quickly. And that was always the goal, right? To get to six figures and then put stock away as much into your 401k as possible, and then retire at 65. And I just realized pretty quickly, even when I started making good money, well over six figures, that it just wasn't really rewarding, and it wasn't really what I wanted. um, and so then the last couple of years been a little bit more intentional about trying to go more down the entrepreneurial path. I've bought a couple rentals. I've done some flips. I've done private lending. I'm an LP in four deals. But I just realized to be an LP doesn't really compress the time frame that I need to get out. For me, it's not a 10 or 15 year window. It's a 3 to 5 year window that I really want to make it out. Um, so I started doing the syndication stuff. Read Joe Fairless's book, read David Lindahl's book. Just been consuming a lot of content. About the last 15 months, I've been trying to be a little bit more active. So I've been networking with brokers, and that didn't really get me anywhere. None of the deals I saw made any sense to me. And since I'm still a newbie, I wanted to, err on the side of conservativeness. So I'm fairly conservative in regards to my exit valuations. And I'm not a big fan of agency debt. I like bank debt personally a little bit better. I just think there's more flexibility there from an exit strategy. And so I've been I've just been cold calling owners the last 15 months. Um, and so I was able to pick up two deals last year, 14 units and a four in Greensboro, North Carolina. And they ended up being pretty fat. I flipped the quad already for 60, it made 60 grand. And then I'm keeping the 14 because it's probably worth about 450 or 500,000 more than I paid for it. So it's cash flowing me like 4 to 5 grand a month right now. Um, so yeah, it's kind of me in a nutshell. I mean, 10 to 60 units in Central North Carolina is kind of what I'm targeting right now. Um, if I could look at bigger deals, I'm not opposed to it. I really feel like I need to become more comfortable as an operator before I continue to kind of raise more capital. I mean, I've got a stable of folks I can go to if I need to, but as far as underwriting and looking in different markets and areas that I am not as competent with throughout the Southeast or just throughout the Midwest, I think that's kind of where I feel like my blind spots are right now. I just don't have enough experience. And so to kind of put that much capital of other people's at risk, I don't feel like I'm competent enough to kind of make some of those assumptions yet.
Okay, so a couple of questions. So um, first, you said that was in Durham or Raleigh or Charlotte. I missed that part.
I wish it was in Greensboro.
In Greensboro. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody I've tried Durham. I mean, everyone in Wake County is just insane. I mean, they just think everything's crazy expensive. So it's just a waste of time from what I've seen. And then Durham County, even that, I mean, everything's 100 a door, even in Durham. I mean, and there's shootings, right outside the front door on a daily basis, and it's still 100 a door there. So nothing really penciled out. I maybe could have hit Durham a little bit more aggressively at the beginning, but now it's just inundated. Anything Raleigh, Durham is just blasted by brokers. And so, to try to pick something up at a discount, which is kind of really what my strategy is that's how I hedge my risk is buying something, 20 to 50% below market value. The unfortunate part is it's just a long sales cycle, right? That's not something you find super readily, but if you can buy one or two deals a year and make a couple $100,000 on them, for me, that's good enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, um, how do you determine in your mind that it's below market value? What metric are you measuring it by?
Um, I mean, primarily price per door. I mean, I know that's not the best metric, but I mean, price per door is kind of what I use personally. but then also, what the NOI is per the cap rate. So, I mean, the appraisal that I got on the 14 unit was, I mean, I don't know why. It was a super cheap appraisal. It was only like, I don't know, $500 or something, or maybe a couple $100. So it was a 10 cap is what they appraised it at. But I think the market's a 6 to 7. So, I mean, right now the NOI is running about 60 or 65K a year. And we haven't even touched it yet. I mean, the collections have been rock solid. So I'm just super fortunate. I mean, all the tenants were inherited. It was entirely occupied when we bought it. So I guess kind of a combination. I mean, price per door is kind of the main driver, but then NOI is obviously a big part of it. But as you know, I mean, you can kind of fudge any of those numbers, right? So,
Right.
I mean, I just kind of look at it, and I mean, I have relationships with brokers. And so I think that's kind of what I say is like, hey, I'm looking at this in this area. What do you think you could sell it for? And then, whatever they say they think they could sell it for, if I can buy it 20 or 30% below that, is kind of what my target is. And then I feel like there's ample buffer in there at that point.
Okay. So it, not really a set metric, but kind of a gut feeling based upon several different um, going in. So cap rate, price per door, broker feedback, all of that kind of going into your um, analysis, if you will, of whether or not it's a good deal. And all of that's fine. I think I agree with you 1,000%. It's very, very hard to find those kind of deals. And that's what I was really trying to determine is how are you evaluating it to be below market? Because everyone that buys an apartment building, regardless of what they pay for it, are saying the same things. I'm underwriting conservatively. I'm buying it under market. We're below market rents. So obviously, everybody can't be. Um, Everyone has to be using a different measuring stick, if you will, because using a standard, not all of those things can be true. And so, just trying to really get a feel. What we find is that it is a very tough market. It is a seller's market, and it's hard to find a deal where you have a motivated seller. And I think that's the biggest key. If it's truly a motivated seller, then potentially you can get a good deal. But if the deals that you have found, have they been on market or not on? When I say on market, were they represented by a broker, or
Yeah,
did
so
you buy them direct?
that's the value add that I'm trying to do is I'm going directly to the owners. So I'm the only person more or less in the negotiation stage. So there's a couple other deals that I've been in deep negotiations with, and for whatever reason they ended up falling through. But I guess that's kind of how, yeah. So my take is nobody else has seen this deal, and so so when you're talking about, which I think your point is extremely valid, and I think that's where I'm kind of disenfranchised because everything is below market, everything's value add, everything's below market rents, but I work under the assumption that these people aren't stupid, that they're business people and they're professionals. And so, I'm kind of, I guess, especially being newer, it's like, it's pretty egotistical of me to think like I can go in and run this building better than this person that's been managing it for 10 years. Not that there couldn't be some efficiencies, but just saying like, oh, that person's an idiot. Like I'm going to go in and, push rents. Like, I mean, they're running a business. They want to be as profitable as possible. I mean, maybe the property's a headache to some extent, but yeah. So the way my value add is I'm just cold calling these people and I'm just talking to them directly. And my biggest success has been anything that's been passed down through, through heirs, right? So the proprietor passed away, they passed it to their heirs, and they're not operators, but it's nice to have a little bit of cash coming in. But depending on the circumstance, their tax implications or whatever the case is, maybe for them it's better just to be like, you know what, just better to have a lump sum of money right now. I don't really need this iterative income stream moving forward. So yeah, I guess I'm trying to find somebody that's motivated, but not so motivated, because the thing's a dump. But I'm fine with picking that up too, right? I mean, if that was the case, and that's why I like Central North Carolina so much, and why I haven't really diverged too much out of there is because I do think it's a good market that if I made a bad decision or got into something, I could flip out of it pretty quickly, right? And that's kind of
Yeah.
what scares me about if I go into these secondary and tertiary. Not that these aren't secondary and tertiary markets, they are, but if I go into some of these smaller markets, then all of a sudden I'm trying to flip out of it. you know, I'm going to find a buyer in Greensboro. I'm going to find a buyer in Winston-Salem, regardless of, you know, how poorly I bought the deal. I can exit it. And I guess that's kind of my thought. And my point around the agency debt is just, I think, to make a lot of these deals work that have been picked over and viewed by a lot of other buyers, you know, they're putting these long debt terms on them. And I see yield maintenance all the time. And that just scares me because they've got yield maintenance on the deal and they're saying they're going to exit it in 5 years. And I just don't see, without great cap rate compression, how they're going to be able to exit it in 5 years without, you know, I don't know. So I guess that's kind of my concern with some of the agency debt. And that's why I like bank debt, because I mean, I don't even have a prepay. So somebody could come to me tomorrow and be like, hey dude, you bought it for 390, I'll pay you 1.1. I mean, I could literally just dump it, you know, tomorrow with no penalty at all. And so I think for me, it's having multiple exit strategies and being able to be as dynamic as I want. Or maybe I picked up an even better deal and now I'm like, oh shit, like I need $800,000 to close this deal. And I could just pull out the equity and 1031 into it real quick. So for me, it's like, I try to build like the snowball effect. You know, how can for me, it's just capital. I interviewed a guy on my podcast, Eric Tart, and he's a physician, just brilliant guy. And he's like, it's really just the flow of capital, right? You know, so I don't really have any emotional attachment to any of this stuff. It's like, where's my capital going? And, you know, it's just, at this present moment, a portion of it's flowing through that asset. But as soon as that asset, you know, I can flow it into something that's a little bit more advantageous, you know, that's what I'm trying to do. So, and that's how I got connected with a lot of the guys, like Andy McMullen. And so I started networking really heavily when COVID hit last year. And so that's when I got a little bit deeper into the syndication side and was vetting sponsors and doing all that stuff. And it was great. And I mean, there's a lot of really good, capable, competent, and successful people in that realm. I thought some of the narratives that were being told were a little bit misleading. And I don't love the whole passive investing to generational wealth thing. I just think it's a really long tail. And so I think the majority of folks I talk to that are like me, mid 30s, make $150,000 to $250,000 a year, want to quit their job, right? And so I feel like passive investing is not a fast way to get there. So if they really want to get out of it, for me, it's you've got to be active. And that's kind of what I took upon myself. And that's kind of the mantra that I want is like, I'm trying to cut the bullshit, so to speak. And that's why some people can say I come across as harsh sometimes, but I think a lot of these syndicators are manipulating LPs. And I think LPs don't really take it upon themselves to educate themselves as much as they should. And I know that from firsthand experience, because I jumped into some deals that I shouldn't have from an LP perspective that don't really meet the criteria that I would want moving forward. And I feel like I'm fairly good at, you know, checking my boxes, you know, and I know a lot of other people are a little bit less, you know, they just are like, oh, this sounds good, let's do it. And so I think some of the narratives out there from syndicators are in my mind a little bit misleading. And I don't think, and so that's kind of what that's why I don't want to become one of them, right? In my mind, like the 612 deals, you know, I hate those. Like, I think they're such shit, you know, and they say it's an inflation hedge and it's like, well, your upside's capped, like, you know, and it's just like, so if it's a 10-year hold or 7-year hold and you're at 612, like what with inflation, I mean, by year 6 or 7, I mean, you could be flat, you know, I mean, even if you're making a 12% return on your initial capital invested, you know, if you're capped on your upside, I guess those are kind of some of the ones.
Could you back up just a second? You said a 612 deal. What are you referencing in a 612 deal? What are you talking about?
Six cash flow, 12% preferred return.
A 12% pref?
Yeah, but it's capped. It's at the back end.
Okay, so you offering you a 12% pref with no upside, just a 12% pref.
Correct.
And that 12% could all come at exit. It does not necessarily come per year or whatever. So
correct.
And 6% is the cash on cash. So the 6% is just a pro forma.
Correct.
So potentially you're talking about a deal you don't get paid at all until the end, and you get a 12 pref.
Correct.
So it's really not, okay, it's a pref, but
it's like a debt. I mean, it's pretty much debt.
Yeah, it's a debt. It's like having a debt note, but without having a debt note. In other words, you're not being taxed on it like a note. You get the advantages of the tax benefits if the sponsor is not taking those away,
right,
in the OA. So I'll be honest with you, I'm not seeing too many deals like that. I know honestly only a couple of operators that are making those kind of deals. So if you're seeing a lot of those, I'd be very interested to know what program is those are coming out of, as far as it's obviously one that I'm not seeing their deals.
I mean, so it's Steve Libman's kind of the big guy that does those a lot. That's kind of his go-to. And I just think, I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, I think it's a lot of people that aren't rich yet that are talking about how great real estate is. And like, I mean, I'm not trying to brag, but I mean, I'm young. I mean, I'm 34 and I'm almost at 2 million net worth, and I'm not trying to say that that's great or sexy, but it's like, it's different when you're rich, I mean, it's scary. Like right now, I don't know what to do. It's like I'm over liquid, but like I don't want to be too heavy in equities because, so I just think the circumstances are different. And I feel like a lot of these folks, like, have they ever invested as an LP in a deal? They're telling everybody that everything's so great and they've never actually done it. And then also the benefits for real estate. Well, inflation hedge. Well, if your upside is capped, then it's not an inflation hedge, and so they say that why real estate is ideal, right? Income, I forgot is D debt. I don't know. But anyways, right. All those things. And then, so I guess like, that's why that's why my podcast is Contrarian Cash Flow. Cause I kind of try to look at things from a different perspective and open people's eyes, because I was fortunate enough. I've been put in good circumstances to maybe, make this leap and kind of go into active operations. And I want to help other people do that too, because it's so empowering. And I think they could do better in the world. But I just think this passive, for me, being an LP investor is like when I get to 5 million or 10 million, and it's like, hey, now I can sit back and kind of, what I need is velocity right now, not yield, right? When I get older and my net worth's higher, then I can start worrying about yield, and then I can start being more worried about it. Or if it's like my retirement funds, which, I always think that that's a little short-sighted too, because it's like, well, how is this helping this person today? I guess I just don't think a lot of them get to the root of what the person wants. If it's literally, they just don't want the volatility of the stock market, then that's fine. But the majority of people want to quit their, the majority of people I talk to are like, oh, I'd like to have enough passive income to quit my job. And so I think that's where I think the messaging gets skewed sometimes. And so I'm trying to combat that and kind of, but I want more of a track record personally, to be able to say, hey, look, I've done this, it's successful. This is what I think you can do to be successful as well. And if you're not comfortable being active because it's a huge endeavor to take on, that's fine. You can be passive, but it's going to take you 15 years to make your nut, to have your enough passive income. So if you want to do it in 3 to 5, you've got to put in the effort and the work and the wherewithal. But if you want to take it in 15, that's fine. But just, be honest with yourself and be honest with me with what you want. And I guess that's where I feel like a lot of operators are telling more than asking, at least in my opinion. But again, like I said, I'm a little bit jaded. So, not everybody.
Is that because of the performance of the 4 LP deals, John?
No, I think it's just because I kind of thought that too, right? I was like, oh, look at this, or just like, hell, like a broker's never asked me, oh, are you an LP on any deals? Like that's one of the big ones, like, oh, invest as an LP and, they'll build credibility with the brokers. And it's like, brokers don't give a shit. All they care is if you're going to pay the top dollar, right? Like, are you going to be the biggest, are you going to be the high winner on, what you're willing to pay for the asset? So I think I feel like I was misled, and I feel like I'm fairly competent. And so I feel like other people are getting misled too. And so I'm just trying to shine light on, hey, do you actually understand what the undertaking you're going on, or are you kind of, a little bit rose-colored glasses? So I just think there should be more transparency. And I mean, and I think a lot of these deals, there's a lot of risk. I mean, I've heard of an operator operating a deal in Raleigh. I mean, a well-known operator that everybody knows, and the deal is 20% under NOI, and they bought it pre-COVID, so it wasn't even, I mean, it was expensive at the time that they bought it, but it wasn't even COVID numbers. And it's like, and that's a big clip, not that they couldn't work their way out, but, a lot of these A-class deals that are going through, I'm just, what is the operations really going to look like? And I don't know, but I'm not an expert, right? You've been doing it for 20 years. I've only been doing it for a couple. So I'm trying to read the tea leaves here and there.
No, I think I would argue that you are an expert. Just sitting here listening to you talk, your level of understanding of the intricacies of how the business works from the inside, I think is superior to 90% of the people that I speak to, even superior to many, if not up to half of the sponsors that are actually doing deals.
That's the scary part.
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary if you're thinking about it from the perspective of educating LPs. But here's the reality, John. Even if we offered to teach for free that depth of knowledge to LPs, how many of them do you think would take us up on the offer?
Yeah, I mean, very few, very few.
Yeah, So I think you're fighting the good fight, and so am I. But I think we're a little bit of the Cervantes, if you will. We're chasing windmills.
So my only point to that, my only counterpoint to that would be, then why even fuss with education in the first place? I mean, no like and trust. What?
For me, the answer is would I like to reach 80% of the people and educate them? Yes, I would. But if I reach one, I helped someone. I'm helping someone every day. I don't know how many someone's. I don't know, how far that's going to get. But if we, I've got two of my sons that just don't want to have anything to do with politics whatsoever, because they really believe in their heart that one vote cannot make a difference. And yeah, or maybe there is a little bit of that chasing windmills attitude in me, but I do believe that one vote counts, and I believe that helping one person has the potential to change the narrative. Because if they tell one person and that person tells somebody, and I think it's that bigger effect. And I think that we need to find a way, and when I say we, I mean the collective we, to educate people, maybe at a higher level, maybe give them a solution. So, I applaud you, for doing this on your podcast. One of my approaches has been a little bit different. I've had the same kind of frustrations, and that caused me to launch a platform, which is the GOB network of apartment investors, which is, I should have just named it the GOB network, but because I have much bigger plans than just apartments. But I want to try to, if people will not take the time out of their busy lives to educate themselves where they're going to invest their money, then I would like to at least create a structure where they can trust the structure. Almost like saying, okay, I found a really good operator, and I really vetted him the first time, but I've invested with him 7 times, and I can guarantee you I vetted him less and less and less each time, to the point where the last 3 or 4 deals, I don't even look, really at his underwriting. I listen to him give me his pitch deck. I trust him, and I don't dig any deeper than that. And we know that that's how most people invest their money, even on the first deal.
Right.
And so my idea is create that kind of trust in a platform where I can create a structure and say, look, any deal that has our stamp of approval on it is going to meet kind of these minimum requirements. And you're going to know that it has this kind of protections on the downside.
Is there any liability with you saying that, though? Is there any do you take on any legal liability for kind of saying anything like that?
Yeah, you can, but I will tell you that anybody that has ever said that never does.
Okay. I just was curious, because that was a concern somebody brought up to me, was like, I can advise you on this, but I can't really tell you what to do, because not because I'm not, being truthful, but I don't know. It would suck to try to do the right thing and then get sued.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the catch-22, right? So you promise all these things, and then you have the legal disclaimer that says, hey, look, you have to make your own decision. You can't trust anything that I just told you. And that's more or less what the legal disclaimers always say, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so if you won't back it up, then why should I trust it? It's the chicken and the egg. There is no real answer there, other than, look, I'm trying to help you, but I can't, I cannot physically, you cannot just give me your checkbook and let me go and invest it wherever I want, whenever I want, and expect me to take full recourse. Even the lawyer giving you the legal advice will not pay out of his pocket if you guys lose.
Right.
And neither will a CPA. So why would you expect me to?
Right.
So that's the catch-22. I understand the feeling that that's a false narrative, And it most definitely can be a false narrative. There's lots of people out there telling you this is the way to do it, but hey, you can't trust me, and the reality is you can't trust them. So I think that if you're going to take that kind of stance and people never test it, I don't have a good response to that. Shame on them for not testing it, because there absolutely are a ton of people out there making a lot of false claims, a lot of false narratives, a lot of pie in the sky. And we could mount and trust me, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. How do we police ourselves? How do we call out the bad operators? How do we bring to people's attention? Well, I think just a conversation like, have you had this conversation publicly on one of your podcasts or on multiple podcasts?
So my situation is I still work full time at my job. So I haven't, which I'm really close. Like, I mean, so we're, like I said, we're very fortunate. My wife makes good money. I mean, she makes 6 figures plus, but we both had, corporates batted us down, I mean, she just got cut. So she's making 50 grand less than she made last year. I've been cut down from 60 grand before for my comp. So, but our passive income's about 8 grand a month now, or not passive, but our whatever, our investment income, which we've got 2 daughters, so I mean our monthly nut is a decent sum, right? But we're pretty good. So I mean I'm kind of getting to the point now where it's like, do I want to jump? Do I not? I don't put in a ton of time for my job, and I still make 140K. So it's just like, what's the point in quitting right now? So I haven't been as boisterous as I want to be yet, because I don't want to be, until I'm like actually quit, I don't really want to be
Jeopardizing
polar, just because like it doesn't make sense, right? I mean, because even just another 2 or 3 months of working for my job, that's 25 grand or whatever net, so it's just
that's a lot more buildings to buy with that kind of income that you can continue to put toward that that monthly passive income though. That's a lot of income to walk away from when you're not having to dedicate a ton of hours to earn it. I would hang on as long as I possibly could.
Yeah, well, I'm just gonna wait for them to fire me. That's kind of the thought, because I mean, I've still got like some, golden parachute type thing that's got like 40 grand in it too. So, I mean, I'm just, like I said, I'm just in a very fortunate spot. And I guess my concern is I'm very fortunate, but like a lot of other people aren't. So, maybe if they put 50 grand in, like if I lost 50 grand, that would suck, but life would go on. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, but a lot of people that are investing in these deals, that's not the same for them. Right. And that's where I'm concerned, is like, it's not the multimillionaire that's losing money. It's the guy and his wife that, that maybe she's a school teacher and he's an army vet, or he works in the military, or he's a soldier, and, and maybe they've got $75,000 in savings, and so they throw 50, or, or they, whatever, they've got $60,000 in savings, throw 50 in a syndication deal. And, of course they're never going to run this thing negative. Well, I guess on the equity side, you can run, the building will be worth something, but I guess you can run the equity down. So, but I guess that was a long-winded answer to your question, but the long story short is I haven't been as polar as I want to be yet. I want to be more polar. And that's the other thing, is I want to start calling out people talking about this passive path to generational wealth. Because I'm going to say, the passive path to generational wealth is you start off generational wealthy, then you can passively invest all you want. But like, even me, I mean, like, me and my wife.
That's a very strong statement. It'll get you a lot of eyeballs. It'll get you a lot of attention, and it could drive a business model. But I think I could easily challenge that assumption, and say I know a lot of people that are creating just the term itself, generational wealth, by just taking those words. There's nothing about that says fast.
So that would be I guess that would be how I'd have to frame it, as like compressing the time frame. So like, because I guess
I'm not trying to, trust me, I think you've got a great hook to drive a lot of traffic to a podcast, and the unfortunate reality is that what you're saying is true for a lot of operators, but I know a lot of operators where it's not true also. So I think that it could be a siren, maybe to wake up a lot of people and maybe call out some of these people that are doing it this way. So I would encourage you to do it. I just would say that it's not a blanket statement, that um, it's not an all or nothing kind of thing. I
Well,
know
and so
people that,
my audience, so to your point, because like generational wealth is ambiguous, right? That's the problem.
right,
So my audience is middle-aged, high income, dual income families. That's my avatar, right? So it's the 35 to 45-year-old family that's probably got two children. I guess I'm kind of my own avatar. And so I'm talking about, I want ten to $20,000 a month in passive income. I don't want, just to cover my $3,000 or $4,000 expenses. And so what the
yeah,
frustration I had is when you like look at it and you're like, okay, well, say I had $1 million liquid just to invest in passive deals. Well, in 7 or 8 pref, that's 70 or 80 grand a year. Well, how many people actually have just $1 million cash liquid? I mean, statistically speaking, there's not a lot, and especially under that 45-year-old range. So I guess that's kind of where, and I guess that's kind of,
so if you're earning a 7 pref, how much would you need? Hey, first thing you need to know, I am the worst person in the world when it comes to math. Even calculators don't work for me.
so
So
yeah.
just if you're really quick, so every 7 pref on I'm just trying to think on on $100,000 investment. If you got a 7 pref, you're going to get 7 grand per year.
Yep.
And if you wanted to be 10 times that, it's 70 grand. Then you need to be, instead of at 100, you'd need to be at 1,000, right?
A million. Yeah, I mean,
A million. Okay, a million. So I told you, too many zeros for me. So you need to invest $1 million to get 70 grand. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, and that's, I mean,
Okay.
but that's not retirement funds. That's literally cash. That's
Yeah,
cash that work and pay you
exactly.
today.
You've got to have the money available to invest. You can't do it from, right, you can't do it from sources that are locked up.
So,
And so to your point, there's very, very, very few people who have that.
so I guess,
And especially most of the people that are investing in these deals at 50K a pop.
Totally, and and that's fine. So my point is, like, that's fine, and I'm not saying that's not an ample strategy. I'm just saying, does your strategy align with what you want? And I think that's the question that I think isn't answered is,
Yeah,
are you looking to compress the time? Like, so case in point. So there's a guy I know that I've actually talked him into doing a couple deals, and because I don't really want to be a capital raiser outside of for deals on my own, like it hasn't been something I've wanted to do yet. And then I got to get back to your GOB thing, because I have a question about that. But
okay.
so, but he's in the Air Force and he's not going to retire for 10 more years. So he's like, if I can put 25 or 50 grand a year into one of these deals, and then I'll have enough passive income when that time horizon's up. Well, that's a strategy, right? He has an idea. He's doing it for a specific purpose, so that hopefully when he retires from the military, he actually has enough income plus whatever his retirement income is. He probably won't have to work, right? But the majority of people don't actually break it down to a strategy. They're just like, oh my gosh, real estate, passive syndication. Okay, great. And I guess, like, 50 grand is a lot, right? 50 grand because they're like, well, invest 50 grand a year into, and it's like, dude, how many people really have? Again, like I said, I'm fortunate enough that we have those means, but there's very few people that, and I'm not trying to say I'm on a pedestal or anything. I'm just speaking to the realities. Is like, to have $50,000 liquid every year to invest into syndication, like, that's a lot of money, right? And I think they kind of poo-poo, oh, if you invested $50,000, because that's their narrative, right? Oh, if you did this, and it's like, well, I don't have 50, but I've got 25 or I've got 20, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, I'm kind of on the path, and it's like, is it really getting them closer to their destination of, in my mind, what it is being able to live solely off their passive income, right? I guess for me, the majority of LPs, that's their goal, right? But is the strategy they're taking actually getting them there, and what's the time frame? But anyways, yeah, it sounds like, I appreciate your perspective, because I think that's why the generational wealth statement is, I might have to change it to replacing, instead of generational wealth, replacing a high income salary is maybe a better way to say it, because then all of a sudden you've got to have $1.5 million or $5, because that's why I'm like, okay, I've got 200 grand or 250 grand liquid right now. Like, well, if I put it in at an 8 pref, like, okay, well, that's 16 grand. Well, does that impact why not just keep my job, and hold on to the liquidity? And if the deal comes up, I can just jump on it or whatever.
The piece that you're leaving out, we're talking strictly really about cash flow from cash on cash returns. And when we're talking about, 7 pref, 8 pref, we're not taking into consideration the exits at 5 years. Now, more and more deals I'm seeing are now underwriting at 7 years. My criteria over the last 5 years is how long does it take for me to double my money? And so I'm looking for a 2x multiple, equity multiple. And I've been very lucky in that there's been a lot of deals over the last 10 years where that was very easy to do. When I first started doing this, you could literally do that every 2 years. Now, but that only there was only about a year where you had, so when I started, literally 2x multiple, 2 years. Then the next year it was 30, you needed 30 months to 2x. And then it was the next year 36 months. And then the next year it was 40 months. And then it was 48 months. And then it was 5 years. And then, you know, now it's creeping up to 6 and 7 years. So every year it seems like we're adding on to that ability, but that's a reflection of where we are in the cycle, in the market cycle. And so if you're not accounting for that and you're just looking at the cash flow, then you're leaving a big chunk of it out. It takes a while to get there, especially if you're starting today, you know, because if it's going to take you minimum 5 years, you know, then it's like you said, it's a long tail. But I think that people can absolutely do it. I know a lot of people who have done it, but they were very lucky because they were in the market over the last 10 years. If you're starting today, you're not going to be where they are, or you're not going to accomplish what they did in 10 years. It's going to take you probably 15, 17, maybe even 20 years to do the same thing they did. You know, but I think to that point, even in a really great market, it still took them 10 years to have but many of them went from, you know, they doubled or even tripled their net worth, you know, during that time frame. And so, you know, I think that you have to, if you're looking at this in the big picture, and I think if you want to be conservative, which I absolutely agree with you, we're selling too much pie in the sky about what your potential is, especially not so much on every deal. I think as an industry of gurus, if you will, there's a dozen people out there pitching that you can get rich doing this as a passive investor, and they're leaving people with the impression that it can happen relatively quickly. And I think that that's absolutely hogwash. I think it's bullshit. And so from that, I think we're 100% in agreement. But I think if you break this down, instead of saying 50 grand, break it down to 25 grand. I think that's a reasonable number that most middle class Americans, not lower middle class, not upper middle class Americans have the potential to do that. Now, are very many of them doing it? Well, no. If you look at the savings rate, even middle class people that are making, you know, let's say 80 grand a year or 100 grand a year total household income. Those people, most of them have almost no savings. So we're still talking a very small percentage of people. But I think that if you look at the number of people that are investing in real estate as a vehicle to try to create some kind of passive income and some kind of generational wealth, you know, we're talking to that small group. We're not talking to that big group, because we have to realize that big group's not listening anyway. You know, but if we use an example that's a 10-year example, investing only 25 a year and saying that you're only going to earn 7% cash on cash, then we can, I think, legitimately outline a possible future that is obtainable for 70% of those people that are investing in these deals without overhyping it, and then using a doubling of money every 5 to 7 years, you know, create a picture of incomes. This is what it looks like. This is the model, you know, that if now that I'm thinking about it, I should make this. It's a simple, what do you call it? A simple spreadsheet. to put a couple of these blocks in place that people could just punch some numbers in and say, okay, here's what I expect. The problem is when you give them the ability to punch the numbers in, they'll all start changing them. Oh, I can do more than that. I can do more than 25. I
Yeah,
can do
but you
50.
can't. But to your point, you can't control that. All you can do is
Yeah,
lead the horse to water. I mean,
yeah.
you can't force them to do. So yeah,
Well, that's another, you just hit on one of my favorite phrases that I love to tear apart. Most of these people, um, it is bad that they're putting 50 grand into a deal without knowing very much. But look at how many of them are doing the same thing, putting 50 grand into a coaching program that has they would absolutely be better off putting that in a deal, even as an LP, than giving it to that coach. Absolutely. And I'll argue that point all day long and give a thousand reasons why.
oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I'm in 1,000% agreement with that. I mean, I just think those are kind of bogus, especially like, I guess my favorite is kind of the think. I don't know Brad Sumrock's students as well, but I mean, the think multifamily one to me is just a joke because it's like you're paying him 50 grand a year to raise money on his deals, and they don't even manage the asset. You know, they sub out the asset management to some third party. You know, so they're not even doing anything. So it's like you're really paying in. I don't know. So, anyways, but that's a topic for another day. But
Okay.
but
Yeah, he is a Brad Sumrock student, by the way. But
um, but
but
so yeah, I mean, I'm super glad we connected because it does sound like we have got a lot of commonalities. So for me, like, I guess my thought is like, how do I give people more control over their income, right? And I feel like, you know, no matter what, when you work for somebody else, at the end of the day, you know, they're ultimately in control of, you know, if you live or die, or if you make money or
yeah,
you don't, right?
yeah,
And so my wife's gone more down the small business path. So she bought a small business last year, and so we're doing more underwriting. So for me, it's like my mantra is like buying cash flow. How do I acquire? How do I optimize? How do I automate? Right? That's what I'm doing. And I feel like the best way to grow equity is to be an operator in a business, and I think of real estate as a business. It's a little bit easier to understand than a lot of other businesses. It's more streamlined. And so
mhm,
that's kind of my mantra. And that's what I'm trying to tell people. If you want to expedite this curve, and the only way to get rich fast is to be an operator, and
yeah,
it requires much more effort. What the thing is, you can do it in 3 to 5 years. But if you want to just, you know, sit back and you like your job enough and you're comfortable, that's fine. You can take 15 years. Just know you're being honest with yourself of what the time frame you want and what your expectations are. And I think the problem is most people aren't being honest with themselves, and these coaches, gurus, operators aren't holding them accountable, saying like, hey, well, what do you really want? And you know, everybody loves the dream, right? I mean, that's the thing. This is all marketing and it's all
yeah,
psychology.
yeah,
And I'm not going to ever get the same level of audience as the guys that are selling the dream, the pie in the sky, which is fine, you know. But the people that I want are gonna and that are gonna surround themselves with me are gonna be people that I can learn from and that are gonna drive me to be better myself. I guess selfishly, it's like I want to be around people that are gonna pick me up and be like, "Hey, John, you didn't think about this or whatever," instead of just like a sheep, you know, that's just like, "Okay, well, this sounds great." So, but so anyways, that's why I was curious when you said the GOB network, because I think that's like for me, it's like I've just really gotten more into the marketing and branding side lately, and just how powerful it really is and how your messaging is and kind of your funnel and your lead side. And so that's why we're trying to go the small business path. And so that's what I'm trying to kind of provide consulting and coaching to folks to either acquiring deals, you know, kind of the same strategy that I'm doing. Hey, this is how you can go and call these owners. And this is how you can buy deals where you have $500,000 in equity, you know, I mean, like walk in, you know, and that's something that not changes your life, but it makes a big impact on it. Right. I mean, I had a goal of 1.5 million net worth by 35, and I wasn't even close by like 33. I was like, you know, whatever, 1.1, 1.2, and, you know, 300,000 in equity. That's a lot. Right. So I was like, shit, like this, no chance. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, you know, and like a chunk like that, you know, then it's like, now that makes a big bounce. And so like, that's what I want to help other people realize is like, if you want to expedite this and get there fast, you know, and be in actual control of that outcome, this is what you need. This is the path you need to take. And so that's kind of the point. So I was curious, you said like GOB, you see bigger than that. So I guess you said outside of apartments, is it all businesses, or what do you mean by bigger than just apartments?
Well, bigger in the sense of anything related to real estate.
Okay, cool.
So not, I wouldn't put in that category purchasing businesses.
Yeah.
That's to me, that's would almost deserve its own platform. But now that you say it, though, it's still, what are we really trying to do? We're all just trying to find ways to create those two things, that passive income and that generational wealth. So in that mindset, why wouldn't I eventually start to include businesses? I think that the platform started out as apartment investing because that's what I know the most about.
Yeah.
And if I knew more about flipping, it would have started out as a flipping platform, so I want it to include anything that we can apply the principles to, and use that to help people get what they want and reach their goals, in whatever way that looks. So your model, I think works, but and honestly, I in a lot of ways, I think your model is the best way to get there. But I also know that the reason most people don't succeed at this is they're not willing to work that hard.
Then they
And
can be
that's
an LP.
why for
That's
most
my
of them,
thought. Is then maybe they could be an LP, right? It's like, hey,
exactly.
so it's like, hey, you're not willing to make this effort. That's totally fine. Look, I got these deals over here, and so like that's why I'm thinking about doing like a debt fund, just because like I do feel like I don't think there always is alignment of interest in, I don't know. I know I'm weird like that, but I don't know if there's always alignment of interest because the operator wants a transaction, right? They want to purchase, they want a sale. And so, but again, like, selling, well, I don't know. Anyways, so I guess that's why I'm looking more at debt, because I want to just be, and then have a smaller stable of more JV partners, that have, decent, like, hey, here's 500,000, hey, here's a deal. I think it's, based off of the market expectations, I think it's worth 2 million. I'm getting it at 1.5. Do you want to be the down payment, co-guarantor, whatever? I'll put in 50 or 100, whatever, so I think, plus that's more fun, like for me, it's like, it'd be cool to be like, talking about it. And like, I don't know, for me, that's just more interesting. And
Well,
I don't know why.
I missed that point. It's more interesting talking about it. It's more interesting
Being actually in the deal, like with somebody else versus like, now these big deals have like their GP teams are like 30 people. To me, how is that like any different than a job? You're just you're one of like 20 versus like one of two that are kind of, I just think it's kind of cool to be closer to the action, I guess. Like that's kind of what I like, is I like the operations. I like being able to pull the levers that, increase income, decrease expenses. Because I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's all it is, right? With real estate or businesses, it's about how do you increase income, how do you increase throughput, and how do you decrease, the expenses and everything. And so that's kind of why, to
So
me,
yeah, all I'm hearing from you, John, is I want to be a sponsor, I want to be an asset manager, and I want to be an owner.
yeah,
And all of them are synonymous in regard to I enjoy the work.
right, right.
And if you don't enjoy the work, then you need to be further down that list of 30. But for me, I don't want to be further down the list of 30. I want to be in the top 2 or 3.
Right.
And that's fine. And I think that's a very legitimate, knowing yourself and knowing that you enjoy that and want to do that. But here's, the older I get, and it's been a very hard thing for me to, and I'm still not good at it, for me to put myself in someone else's shoes and realize that, number one, they're not me. They don't have my desires. They don't want to do what I want to do. They're not willing to do what I'm willing to do. And I need to allow them to be themselves and try to find success within what they're willing to do. Now, do all of us want to grow? Yeah, but we don't always want to grow to be you or to be me. We may want to grow to be something very, very different, and so I think there's a role for every one of those people. The problem is it's very, very hard sometimes not to be number 30. When you come into a lot of these deals, they just want to, that's on the syndication side and even on the JV side. When you come into real estate deals, the hardest thing in the world when you're breaking in is if you're not the lead dog, it's very, very hard to find someone who will allow you to run with the lead dog at the front of the pack, because lead dogs generally don't like to have someone beside them.
Right.
And that's the biggest, for all of these lead dogs out there, that's the hardest thing in the world for them. is to figure out how to get there. I know it took me forever to finally figure out a way to get into a deal, other than as an LP, because as an LP or as a KP, very easy to get into deals. You just, everybody wants you, but I, I, I think there's a lot of alignment in the way we think. I can see a lot of not from the income standpoint. I was never what I would, well, maybe I was. I always considered myself very middle class, but that's probably a mentality more than anything else, because I know I was luckier than a lot of people. But
I know I'm skewed. I think if you're not making, I think for me, upper class is $500,000 a year. That's kind of how I determine it. I know that I know that that's kind of for me. It's like, because I mean, when you get to upper class, it's so different, right? So, I mean, in society's eyes, I know I'm upper class, but like in my own eyes, I'm middle class, because we live in, our mortgage is $1,400 a month. Our cars are paid off. Like, I drive a Honda Accord. I mean, my wife just got a new car, but
yeah.
but whatever. So it's
Well,
just,
I would say you live in a you're living in a what I guess the affectionate way of saying it would be to say you're like part of that fire community. But for me, I've always thought of it, I live a poverty mindset because that's where I come from, and I don't ever want to go back there.
yeah.
So I try to pay for everything in cash, especially when it comes to things like cars. I only get a new one when the other one just will not work anymore. So you're in that, I'm going to make sure my money works hard and that I try to make it do something for me other than just buying a shiny object. So a lot of that, and I would say I don't think there's a middle class anymore. I think there's a lower middle class, a middle class, and an upper middle class. And I think that you're right. Wealthy for me is definitely, I think, 500K or over. But I think if you're in that family income of 150 to 350, I think well, no, 200 to 350, 200 to 400, I think puts you in the upper middle class, not necessarily amongst your friends, but definitely amongst the general population,
Yeah.
In that regard. But
That's a good way to, do you know Jerome Myers at all?
I do.
Or do you
I
know him?
don't know him. I don't know him well.
Okay.
We're internet buddies. We're not buddies.
Yeah. So he's my coach for the real estate side. And so, I've got a session with him today, so I might bring it up again, because I do feel, because like that's one of his biggest concerns. So I don't know if there could be a collaboration there or something like that, because I know that that's like his biggest concern too, is around the lack of education that people are putting into this stuff. So I'll kind of just put a bug in his ear and just say, like, we had a really enjoyable conversation. It might be worth just whatever, you guys do whatever you want, but I just might tell him, like, hey, it might be worth kind of connecting, because it sounds like you guys have a lot of common out, because him and I kind of think the same way too, in that regard, in that just there's a lack of education, but but like you said, and I think one thing I'm going to take away from this conversation that you said was, like, most people aren't willing to do what it's necessary to be where they want to be. And
Yeah.
like, you think I want to be cold calling these people? Of course I don't. But like, that was the only way I could get into a deal. I mean, that
Yeah.
was the fastest way to get into a deal. And I enjoy it now. It's kind of fun just to mess with people, or, like
Yeah.
whatever, it's,
Well, I think also it's lucky you're lucky that you have the kind of income that allows you to buy these kind of assets.
right.
So it's a very different thing if you're starting from a place where you don't have that kind of money to put in. You may believe that this is the fastest way there, and I believe that it is. I believe that direct investment that you control is the fastest way there. But I don't think it's reasonable for most people, because if you have no money, not only do you have to exercise the idea, but you've also now have to go out and find that money partner that will, and that process can be just as hard and just as long, but it's a lot better than the alternative.
Right.
It's a lot better than, I just don't think most people will put in that kind of work. And you can, yeah, we could talk about this all day long. We could go back and forth and back and forth, and I enjoy the conversation, by the way. I love it. But and I wouldn't want to try to change your mind in any way, or Jerome's. I think that both of you, the mindset, if you have the ability to do it, if you have the capital or the capital partner, I absolutely believe that that's probably the fastest way to creating wealth. I just don't think that most people are at either in the right place to be able to do it, or have the mindset to do it.
Right.
So
And I
then
mean, I
what do
guess
we do
that,
with all of them?
yeah. And I guess that's kind of where it comes down to what my avatar is, right? I mean, and so it's, someone that has the means to do that. They've proven to themselves that they're capable of, creating some level of income from a corporate perspective. Now, how do they refocus that energy so they can do it for themselves at a much more tax advantaged way? So even if they're only making 100 or 150 grand, 1099, well, maybe they pay, 10 or $20,000 in taxes versus 150 W-2, and they're paying, 40 to $50,000 in taxes. And so I think that's just so, but yeah, I mean, so what are, I guess I know it's a really big question, but what are you looking to do? And is there anything I can do to help you, or, what can I kind of do, or just
Well,
kind of stay in touch?
I would love to stay in touch. Absolutely love to stay in touch. So number one, what is your cell phone number?
Yeah, it's 520 548 3882.
3882.
Yep.
So do you use a Google Voice number also?
I don't. That's my cell phone. I probably should. The crazy thing is, dude, like when I'm calling people, they pick up my number all the time. I have no idea. Like I'm in North Carolina, it's a Southern Arizona number, and I'm just like, so I haven't changed it just because. I mean, the thing is, these older people, I think, a little bit are lonely too, right? So it's kind of a good time. The challenge right now is, why would they give up income if unless they're, like you said, unless they're greatly distressed, and that's the challenge with convincing them to sell is, there's not very good alternative strategies to perpetual income right now, other than like annuities or anything like that. So like, why am I going to sell this, have to pay 30 or 40% tax on whatever my gains are, and then all of a sudden put it into an annuity? So I'm trying to get better at my pitch and how I'm talking to them, and kind of talking about, either deferred sales trust or, Delaware statutory trust, or whatever these other options are. I was thinking about this morning. I'm like, well, I haven't even worked in like material costs. Cause like, that'd be a good, like, well, I mean, you've seen the cost of lumber. I mean, material costs are growing up. You better just jump out now and hedge your bets and, jump into one of these big deals instead of worrying how to rebuild your whole structure, because it's going to be really expensive. But yeah. So I don't use a Google Voice. I probably should get. I mean, I've got one. I just don't use it really very readily.
Yeah. I'm assuming you've had that phone number for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, since high school. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a 3010105, and I have, I think, two or three phone numbers that are very, very, very close to that. And I started using a Google Voice number that's the same number, but just a different area code. I could have kept the same area code and just tried to make the number as close, find as many digits. So Google Voice would be 520-548-3881 or 3880, and just go through that list until I found a number that was really close. And I did that because I, on two occasions, lost my phone or had the phone go dead and broke, and was not able to recover all of my contact information, but more importantly, all of my text, because we do a lot of business in text now. And so I lost all that, and I decided I was never going to lose that again. And so I switched to Google, a Google number, and made that my default phone number for everyone, just because I know everything resides in the cloud. And
Yeah,
I
that's a
know
really
that
good idea.
yeah, I know that you can, now with most of the phones, you can back everything up to the cloud. I don't know if they've given the ability to back all your text up into the cloud. I know all your contacts, but the text were the biggest thing for me. That was the biggest piece I was missing.
Yeah, no,
So,
that's a really good point. I'll definitely check into that for sure, for sure. So, do you have? Well, I've seen like your like little GOB network affiliates and stuff like that. Do you have any North Carolina meetups or anything?
we don't have anyone yet that has started one in North Carolina, and so far everything that we're doing is virtual. We are The only one that we've built out that has the capacity to be both virtual and in person is the one in Chicago. But we're trying to figure out the easiest way to do that for our members, so that it doesn't cost them money. In other words, what kind of place do they need to find? Well, they need to find probably something along the lines of uh, uh, a, a university classroom, or a business conference room, or a sports bar that has multiple screens, so that you can have the screens and have the ability to have in person plus the virtual piece on the big screens. So we haven't figured that out as far as a best practice yet. And we may not figure it out. We may just leave that up to each individual to figure out on their own and just make suggestions. But no, we don't have anyone in either of the Carolinas yet that's taken up the mantle.
Cool. Well, yeah, definitely super happy we connected. And yeah, if you want to shoot me a text just so I can throw your number in my phone, that would be great as well. And then
are you iPhone or Android?
Android.
Okay, I'll send you. I think that you can import a data file so that
Okay.
you don't have to. You don't have to. I can send you my contact via. I think it's a VCF file or something along those lines, and you just say import, and it should import all of the data so that you don't have to recreate it yourself.
Perfect. And I guess lastly, like, I mean, are you looking to, you said KP, I mean, do you KP on deals, or are you looking to get into, do you want to be closer to, like, are you cool with JV stuff, or do you like larger deals?
Well, here's my thing. I lost almost, I lost 6 figures in a deal last year. And it wasn't low 6 figures. It was much closer to mid 6 figures. And I've had those kind of failures, those kind of setbacks, what Rod Cleef likes to call seminars. I've had a lot of those in my lifetime. And but I just turned 63, and I cannot afford to, in my mind, I cannot afford to have another one.
Yeah.
This one, it really hurt my liquidity, and also put a dent in my net worth.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
mean, that's a big number. I mean, that's a big
yeah,
number. I understand.
yeah,
So.
for anybody, that's a big number. I would think that even somebody with the money of Warren Buffett would not cough at that number and just say, oh well, but having said that, that has put me, that was part of the impetus behind starting the GOB network. And it put me in a position where I literally thought, okay, I can retire. I don't need to keep doing this. And retirement is my safest option because it prevents me from making any decisions that could go wrong. But it's also, it doesn't satisfy where I am in my life. And so I wanted to find a way to continue in the business, but to reduce my risk. And one of the ways that I'm doing it is I'm helping people by helping sponsor their deals. So if they're doing agency debt, they need a sponsor. They need a KP. They typically will need not just a sponsor, but a lot of other pieces that go with that, the schedule of real estate owned and all the other things that you're going to need. And so I'm trying to provide that for as many people as I can to help them become a better investor or a new investor, or to kind of get them jump started if they've been stuck for a while. And then, I've got a lot of people that are stuck on one property or stuck on 2 or 3, and they haven't been able to get past it. Especially people that started out independently and tried to do it by themselves, started with a single family, went to duplex, fourplex, and are kind of stuck in that 4 to 10 range and have not been able to figure out how to grow. And so I'm providing myself personally, and also the GOB platform, trying to provide all those pieces if somebody wants to take advantage of them to grow.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and ultimately that's kind of what I want to get to as well, right? I mean, I've got a long ways to go, but I mean, I think I don't know, the KP side seems like the best one. It's like, hey, you can, use this, and obviously there's some risks, right? I mean, obviously you're signing on the debt, and if the deal goes south, then you're ultimately responsible, but you're kind of arbitraging something that's not really a value to you to get equity stake in a deal. So
Correct.
that's definitely something that I'm that's in the back of my mind. And, eventually I'd like to kind of start getting down that path as well. So,
Well, I would love to, you and I, just do me a favor, don't ever again schedule a half-hour conversation with me, because you and I cannot talk for half an hour.
yeah.
There's a lot of strategy here that, whether you're part of my network and part of the GOB or not, I definitely want to maintain a close relationship. There's a lot here that I would love to talk to you about and strategize about. I think you're in a very, very good position, even right now, to launch pretty fast, pretty big, in a lot of different
my
ways.
dad was corporate his whole life, and he's a CFO. So, I'm trying to get that victim mentality out of my mind. It's like the sky is falling. And so I just the two things is I need to get my lead magnets better on point. And I need to get my lead funnel built out. Right. And then I feel like I'm good. Like once that's done, then I might just jump, because I do know personally, I need that impetus. Like I need that. I'm an underdog and I've always been that way. I mean, again, I grew up upper middle class, like I'm super fortunate, but like my mentality has always been underdog. I've never been the best player. I've never been the best looking guy, as much as I like to think I am. I've always been kind of that underdog. And so I think right now it's like, I've been talking to a lot of people and they're like, you're just too comfortable, and so like, it's like, yeah, that money's great, but like, I think I need that shock to my system, and so but to your point, yeah, I think I'm kind of getting there. It's just, I want to at least get some things a little bit more baked together so that I feel better and more comfortable. Because the worst thing would be is if I jump and then all of a sudden I'm freaked out, I'm an asshole to my wife, my kids, like that's the worst thing. So, but I appreciate that. And yeah, I always feel bad taking an hour from people the first time, and who knows, if this conversation went south, then we both could leave pretty quickly. So but yeah, no, I'd love to stay in touch. And I mean, yeah, if there's, I guess, so from my perspective, I'm trying to help coach people on how to find deals, because I think that's the best way because then you can make the rules, right? You can say, you can bring on partners, you can choose how to set up the deal. And I guess for me, it's, having control over their own finances. And so that's why I think it's big for them to actually find the deal.
How are you finding these owners, and how are you reaching out to them? How are you getting the information you need to reach out to them?
I bought Reonomy. So
Okay.
it's, $3,000 a year for a subscription. So
just for North Carolina, or just for an MSA?
It's national. Yeah,
Oh,
national.
that is cheap compared to CoStar.
Yeah.
CoStar you'd had to add, you said 3,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have had to add at least a zero to that to get CoStar.
So it's been pretty good for me. And then I'm thinking about, maybe selling off some lists or whatever. I've got 1,000 properties that I can export per month. So that's another strategy is like, if I'm working with somebody, okay, pay me 50 cents or $1 per lead. I'll pull you a list of 500 properties. And I know they wouldn't love that, but that's kind of a thought. But yeah, so Reonomy is what I use. And then I just cold call them. I either look them up in the Secretary of State to understand their entity and who the entity owner is. The nice thing about Reonomy that I like is it shows you all of the, like when the property traded, what the debt on it is, if there's any debt on it. And so I know that, because like that's what the pain in the butt. It's the pain in the butt isn't finding out who the owner is. The pain in the butt's finding out when did they refinance, when's their balloon due, how much do they have on their note, blah blah blah. But like Reonomy tells me the majority of that, so I can just call them and be like, okay, they don't have any debt on this, like, so I can be pretty aggressive with the negotiations or whatever the outcome is. So but yeah, I would yeah, no, it's super fun. I'll have to text Andy and tell him that it was a really good idea, because I'm a little bit cautious now networking with people, just because I'm like, there are so many jokesters and people that are just kind of like, not really worthy of talking. It's like, do I need to talk to another wannabe sponsor again or something like that, so, which, I mean, I'm just saying for me where I'm at, what I need from them, like, that's not really what I need, what I'm looking for. So, but no, I really appreciate the time, and yeah, looking forward to staying connected. And yeah, I'll keep an eye out. I think I'm trying to figure out, do I want to try to build my own community, and so that's why I don't want to like commit to stuff right now, because I think that's my thought.
Well, I would tell you, I could get, eventually, a lot of this for me is a passion project.
Yeah.
I don't think this is, if I were just trying to increase my net worth in income, this is not the best way to do it.
Yeah, but I mean, but at some point when you reach a number, does it really matter, right? My goal isn't to be 100 million. My goal is to be worth 5 to 10 million, So like at that point I can live very comfortably. My wife can be comfortable. We can take vacations when we want. We can buy a vacation house if we want. We can do whatever we want. Like, cause I'm helping coach my buddy right now. He's an engineer. And so it's going to be like my first like actual kind of like trying to coach somebody through kind of the scenario that we're talking about. And like just even so far, and I haven't even done very much, I'm like, man, this would be so cool, like if I could really help them. And so I guess like
Yeah.
for me,
Well, for that piece, if it's the joy of doing it, which for me it is, it's really a lot of the joy of doing it, and it's feeding my soul, but it's not making me rich. As a matter of fact, it's costing me money the way I'm doing it.
right.
Because for me, all of the profit, it's kind of like we were talking about that back end. You only get paid when it sells at the end. That's kind of the way I'm doing this. I'm using, if it's a three-legged stool, I'm borrowing from the tech industry a business model that I'm applying to real estate that has never been done before. And I'm trying to break it. I'm trying really hard to break it. So it's a freemium model, similar to Google. I'm giving away everything. You get your Gmail and the spreadsheets and the documents and the PowerPoints and all that stuff, just giving everything away for free. As an example, you mentioned the Reonomy piece. I've put together a list of every owner in every MSA and given the phone number, the contact information, the site, how many units, how long they've owned it. All of that information is on my platform for free.
Wow.
And
Wow.
guess how many people are taking advantage of it?
Not enough.
Well, to the best of my knowledge right now, not even one. I know there's somebody taking advantage of it, and they just don't want to talk about it because they're afraid somebody else will get to it before they do. I'm sure there's probably 10% doing that. But the reality is, I thought that would be the biggest section of conversation on my Slack channel. Every single day would have 20, 30, comments in that, just about that. And it's been crickets.
Well, like you said, I mean, so that, yeah, I mean, like you said, majority of people aren't going to be willing to take the endeavor on, and that's fine. And my point is just be honest with yourself. Like this is tough, right? I mean, the operator side is challenging. There's a lot of risks. I mean, even now it's like, I mean, my deal could just go south or whatever, whatever. So there's a lot of risks, but I just like being more in control. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, man,
I'll say you're going to build your wealth faster than I'm going to build mine, doing exactly what you're doing the way you're doing it right now. So
I'm a tinkerer. So
on,
it's not the money, it's more like the optimization. And then the money's just kind of the, it's like kind of the ancillary benefit. So for me, it's like, if I can make this better and then also help people, like, I think it'd be really cool. And then selfishly, it's like, I'm going to be surrounding myself with pretty powerful people. These people are just buying, optimizing and automating businesses. Like, how much am I going to learn from them? So I guess like, I kind of tried to see how can I make this 360, but also profitable for myself.
Well, yeah, what I'll tell you from a selfish standpoint, what you add to my life is I should have started off the way, and I should have stuck with that strategy, what you're doing, and I would be much further along in my life. And I'm very old school. I'm very seat of the pants, and make a phone call and do everything the old-fashioned way. So I have so much that I need to learn in regard to how to automate and how to streamline a business, and so people like you, I have a ton to learn from. And so that's on the selfish side. On the giving back side, I hope, all the mistakes that I've made over 63 years and the insights that I've learned in this industry, that those can be valuable in having those kind of discussions with each other. So
yeah,
but,
no, absolutely. But I'll let you run, man. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and we'll definitely be in touch. Have a wonderful rest of your week and a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend.
Thanks, John. It's a great pleasure to meet you.
Likewise. All righty. Have a good one.
You too.